Hey everybody, Phil here. Thanks for joining me. Tonight's live stream's not exactly special, but it is worth noting that I've been doing this about a year. I'm not going to celebrate because I really wish things were different, and the circumstances that led me to doing these for a full year never happened, and the virus and everything. However, it is an accomplishment of some sort. And tonight's stream is going to be a little different than what I've been doing generally. As usual, I'm going to be playing a few songs, bringing you up to date on some music stuff. But I'm also going to be talking about some music videos that I have uploaded to my YouTube channel that are kind of special. They deal with New York City in the 1980s and 90s, and they're specific to a lot of the performers in music, art, fashion, and so forth. And they're kind of rare. I was given them by people. Honestly, I didn't film any of this footage. I want to mention a couple of the filmmakers right from the beginning. Danny Courtjetz and Scott Witherall. So I'm going to be talking a little about those videos. If you haven't had a chance to check them out, I put them on a playlist on my YouTube channel so you can see them all. They're about 30. No one's going to sit through all of them, but you can kind of come and go and jump around. And, they include a lot of famous performers. Delight, Psychedelic Furs, Liquid, Certain General, Conk, quite a few, particularly artists that were real popular at the time. So, I'm going to be talking about that a little. I'm going to be focusing on a couple of events that are represented in the videos. Both of them were filmed by Danny Courtjetz. One is an event in August of 1981 that I attended because I played it. I was there on stage. And then another is an event from May 1990 that I did not attend. There's a whole bunch of videos, and I don't really have time here to talk about all of them. So, but that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be playing a few songs, playing a few songs. So let's play a few songs. I've got a single coming out. How about that? On everybody's favorite European label, Adore Britain Records. It's going to drop on April the 9th. It's called Walk in the Sun. And it's a tune I co-wrote with my Hudson Valley River pal, David Shell, up Kingston Way. And I'm looking forward to its release. So you're going to get a sneak preview.
It's good to be
my morning coffee in the sun. It's good this night is done in the sun. Oh, I need a walk in the sun. In the sun. Oh, I need a walk in the sun. In the sun. In the sun. In the sun. All right, Walk in the Sun. Incidentally, I've got a fun announcement. I'm going to be performing live with my band next month, April 17th in Long Island. So all of my Long Island friends, please try to make it. It's going to be at Buckley's, which is a famous venue there at Valley Stream. April 17th, it's going to be the release party for the song you just heard, single release party. And I'll have some great musicians with me. Let's see, Bobby Muller on drums, Annie Hussick on bass, and Mr. David Fleming on blues harp. So I hope you can make it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've played a few shows in the fall solo, and of course I've been doing these things. But it'll be great to get together with some people. 9 p.m. They'll have some other bands on the bill too. They're kind of sorting that out still. One set only, 9 p.m. Don't be late. Oh, it's incidental, random, not planned. Social distancing, the usual. Okay, so yeah, that's going to be the single. It's going to drop on April 9th. I got one more to do, and then I'm going to talk videos with you. This is the most recent single that came out last month, I think, February, maybe? Okay. It's called Voice on the Phone. Ring me up on the phone, crying to me all alone. My voice to hear, can see you again this way. It's been a year since you left this place, memories I can't erase. I hear your voice and I always feel this way. You had to leave this world, you're gone, but you just can't say goodbye. Go on, go on. You had to leave this world, you're gone, but you just can't say goodbye. Go on, go on. Rang me up on the phone, crying to me from the beyond, but on the other side to say this way. Someday, okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, let's talk a little about some New York arts history, 1980s. First, I want to mention that I'm trying to keep this focused about the videos, and I'm hoping you're going to watch them. But a little of this does involve me, of course, because I lived here in New York in that time, and they were given to me by a lot of different people because of my involvement, usually in the event. Not always. They're not all like that, but a lot of them are. Does anybody know what event occurred August 9th, 1981 in the East Village? Okay, I don't see anybody typing in any answers. All right, that's cool. There was a major concert in the park that day. I believe it was a Sunday. It was a hot summer New York muggy day. Not too bad. And I was one of the performers with a new band that I had started working with called Certain Generals. There were 5 bands performing that day. And there was a huge crowd, and it was in the band shell at Tompkins Square. And yes, Tompkins Square used to have a band shell. I think it was torn down 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Maybe somebody that lives down there can remind me. It was on the south side of the park, and the stage faced north. And it was a little closer to Avenue A, but it was pretty much in the center. And there was a big cement area in front of it that people would watch shows and so forth. And it had a lot of history. I actually played there 2 or 3 times in the 80s. I know the Grateful Dead performed a free concert there in '67. There's some stuff online about it. I did a little homework for this, folks. I did a little research, so I knew a little more about what I was going to be talking about. So this concert ran from 2 to 6 p.m. It was produced by a couple of Irish people, young Irish people that were living in New York, Una Johnston, and her husband or boyfriend, Felon. And I knew Una prior to that concert because she booked a bar in the East Village called the UK Club that I played at. She had booked me there a few months before. And so she was the one that put the show together and produced it. Like I said, there was a huge crowd. Hard for me to really give you an accurate estimate. I would say anywhere between 400 and 1,000 people were in Tompkins Square Park that day. And there's video footage that I've got that shows all those people. Shows the big crowd, both from the stage view and then the filmmaker filmed some shots of the crowd, which was a very interesting crowd, I'll have you know. The MC for the event was Mark Josephson. I don't know how many of you know who Mark was. I will say I was saddened to find out he passed away earlier this month. I had been out of touch with him for many, many years. We were friendly. I wasn't a close friend of his. But Mark was a real player in the New York City music scene in the 80s and 90s. He was part of the team that started the New Music Seminar, which initially was this kind of medium-sized music business convention based in New York City, usually in the summer. And it grew to be quite huge by the late 80s. And it spawned, in my opinion, South by Southwest. And I think there was another music convention in Toronto for a while in the late 80s, early 90s. But South by Southwest was basing its model on the New Music Seminar in the beginning. And Mark Josephson was part of that. He, I don't know exactly who the team was, but I know he spearheaded it, and it got to be quite successful. It eventually shut down in the mid-90s. I'm not sure why. I guess because it quit making money, probably. And Mark was also started and was involved with this DJ vinyl music distribution system called Rockpool. And I'm not sure how that worked. Maybe DJs subscribed to it and they were mailed records once a month. I'm really not sure, but it was a big deal. Yeah, you know, a lot of DJs that were playing, you know, new wave disco kind of stuff, WLIR stuff, indie stuff. These were the beginning days of indie labels and stuff. Wasn't that easy to get those records, and maybe Rockpool provided a way for them to get them, so they didn't have to hustle. They just pay a set fee and get it. There was also a similar VJ video distribution company called Rock America that was around in those days, and I've got a couple of videos. I think I've got one up on my site that's a Liquid video, music video for their song "Group Me Group" that I think has Rock America on it branded somewhere. And you know, in the early days of music video, a lot of the clubs had VJs, and they would have video lounges, and so I guess the VJs needed to get videos to play, so things were distributed that way. Now, how did I end up with footage from this event, this very under-documented, under-recorded event? And you got to realize this is pre-cell phone days. Camcorders were huge. Not a lot of people carried them around. No internet. Well, the event was filmed for a public access television show called the New York Entertainment Scene. And the footage was aired on that show either late August of '81 or sometime that fall, but not long afterward, maybe a couple of months around that time. And the producer of that show was Danny Kornientz, who was a friend of mine, and he was involved in everything with music and video in that era. Right now he runs a very successful computer repair business. But in that era, he was in on everything. He was a VJ at the Peppermint Lounge. I think he worked at Danceteria as a DJ. I'm not sure though. But he probably did. I know he worked at the Peppermint Lounge, the old Peppermint Lounge in the Times Square area. He produced and edited music videos for bands. I saw one online for this band US Ape with Shauna Laurie and a couple other people I knew. He did a lot of video shoots for fashion shows. There's one up on my site. Excuse me. So he had his hand involved in everything, and he is a wealth of knowledge about all this stuff. And a few years ago, I tried to talk him into starting to write his memoirs, and I helped him a little bit. Unfortunately, we didn't get very far, I regret to say. But maybe I'll interview him or something on video, because he knows so much, and a lot of this is forgotten history. You know, the technology has totally changed. The people have totally changed. I mean, we're going back 40 years. You know, multiple generations. A lot of the people, like myself, that were involved in that scene were super young. You know, I was in my early 20s, if that. Maybe I was 19. A little about me, just to kind of preface that. I moved to New York in the very early 80s. I've been playing music professionally here ever since. In the 80s, I lived almost exclusively in the East Village. I played bands in the East Village. I played shows in the East Village. I was part of the music and arts community there. Very into it. You know, it's funny, when I first moved to New York and I ended up in the East Village, you know, there were times for 2-3 years when I first lived here, where I could go a few weeks without leaving the East Village, and it wasn't a conscious decision. I didn't really know the rest of the city that well. And it's a huge place. Forget about the boroughs. I'm just talking about uptown Manhattan. I worked in the East Village. My social life was in the East Village. My artistic pursuits were based in the East Village. So that's how I know a lot of these people. A lot of the people in these videos were friends of mine and very, very important to me in my life at that time. And I'm friends with some of them to this day. We've lost a few of them too, that I regret to say. But anyway, so this event, this underdocumented kind of lost event, which I've actually perpetuated interest in through these videos I posted, which incidentally were filmed by Danny, and he gave them to me to post about 10 or 12 years ago when I was developing my Prefab International Cine video channel on YouTube. Have kind of kept alive some of this stuff. A lot of the footage is candid. There's some specific videos that pertain to specific events, like this August of 1981 concert. I'm going to talk real briefly about another event later that happened in 1990 that Danny also filmed. But he didn't film all of them. And Scott filmed a whole lot in the mid-'80s at the Pyramid, at Danceteria. He was a friend of the group I was working with then, Surgeon General. So he always had one of those huge, big camcorders around. And it was cool. Really cool. Scott filmed a lot of footage, and he eventually moved back to Florida with it. And it was stored there for years, 10, 20 years or something. And when Hurricane Andrew hit, his house flooded. And a lot of the videos were destroyed, I regret to say. He went to Europe with Surgeon General, and he filmed a whole lot of stuff over there. A little bit of it got back, but not much. So Scott's a great guy. He's still alive and kicking in Florida. I need to touch base with him. But Danny was the guy that did these videos that I'm going to talk about and that I urge you to watch. August of '81. Anyway, so Danny filmed and produced that show, the New York Entertainment Scene. It was a public access show. I didn't get cable TV till the early 90s, so I wasn't watching public access. I wasn't watching Channel J or any of that kind of stuff. I remember a friend had me over one time to watch Channel J, a show called Midnight Blue that was hosted by Al Goldstein, who published Screw magazine, which was kind of this newspaper and newsletter for the porn industry in New York. And I knew a couple people that worked for it, doing layout and stuff. And so one time I went over to my friends, and he was, "Oh, you got to see this show. You won't believe this show." And no, I didn't believe it. It was pretty unbelievable. Stuff like that was on TV. Can't imagine it happening now. So New York Entertainment Scene, I think, was on Channel J or something. And the footage from the concert is well edited for 1981. The show was sponsored by this nightclub called Interferon, which I remember going to. I may have played it, and that's about all I remember. In the video they show an awning for the club. You'll hear Mark Josephson urge people to go down to the Mud Club about 9:30, 10 o'clock later that night for like an after party. And I actually did head down there. I remember going to that party. All right, so that's a little info about that concert, kind of what it means. I'm going to play a couple more songs, then I'm going to talk a little about the bands that perform there, because all of them I knew, most of them, not all of them, most of them, And just a quick rundown. I'm going to go into a lot greater depth about who was playing. They were Conk, Liquid Liquid, Surgeon General, that's me, Essential Bop from the UK, and Pierce Turner, who was kind of moonlighting from his regular band called Major Thinkers. Okay? But a little later in the program tonight, I'm going to go into a little more depth. Cheers, by the way. About what those bands were, what the scene was, what it was like to be a young, very young rock musician in New York City in the early 80s. All right. We're going to do another song I wrote that deals with some history, kind of going back to the century before what I was talking about. Hellcat Maggie was this folklore character that lived in one of the first big ghettos in North America. It was in New York City. It was called Five Points. And it's a neighborhood that has been written about a little. There were a lot of gangs, Irish gangs, and it was the subject largely of the Scorsese film Gangs in New York. You might have seen DiCaprio and a horribly miscast Cameron Diaz, I felt. Yeah, so this song's about Hellcat Maggie. It's kind of a fictional little vignette about her. I've been lying low in the shadows, hiding behind the locks. Money I owed if you find me, I get strung up behind the dock. I sleep all day in the cell, wake up to drink me my swill. At night I creep up to Orange Street, I go and I get me my fill. Hey, hey, Maggie, I know if she finds me, she go and she bite off my ear, cut me up and hang me. That's why I live in such fear. Hey, hey, All right. That was off now my recorded call. It's all real good. Incidentally, I've got some info there. If you're in a generous mood, you want to toss me a generous tip, virtual tip. My Venmo and my PayPal info is up there on the post. Greatly appreciate it. You're under no obligation, of course. But us musicians greatly appreciate it, particularly since live music has been shut down. All right. One more, then I'm going to talk a little more about that concert. This one called Railroad Bill. Cigar with $100 bill. You know that man, he stole my wife. If I don't like it, he's gonna take my life. Buy me a gun just as long as my arm. Kill anybody ever done me harm. Drink my whiskey, drink it in the wind. Doctor says it'll kill me, I'll never say when. Early in the morning, standing in the rain, round the bend come a long freight train. Bill shot John Hardy, that's what they said. Shot him dead, stone cold in the head. He's a badass son of a bitch, that Railroad Bill. He never worked, and he never will. I hear Bill singing his hobo song. Coming to kill me, I won't be long. Railroad Bill, everybody. He's a badass son of a bitch, that Railroad Bill. Badass son of a bitch. Okay, now where was I? Talk a little bit more about August 1981. So, that summer, what was it like to be a musician in 1981 in New York City? Hi, Dee Dee. Hi, Steve. Haven't really been paying attention. Maybe I should start. So I've been playing with Surgeon General for a few months. I think we did our first show that spring. We were a young band. At the time, I was really kind of self-absorbed with my world there in the East Village. I didn't really have much of a sense what was going on in town other than me, in my world. I was kind of like a self-centered young person. You know, you heard them before. You know what I'm talking about, right? But looking back on it, kind of looking at the different neighborhoods of Manhattan and what kind of music was being made there, the East Village to me seemed to be a real landing spot for people in their 20s, very young people, people that were artists, people that had gone to art school, people that wanted to live the big city experience. Rents were cheap, food was cheap, meals and restaurants was cheap, life was cheap. Not really. Life was dangerous, that's for sure. I lived there, I worked there, I got mugged there a few times. That's for another show. Crime in the 1980s with Phil. But that was my perception. People were into live music, a lot different than it is now. The West Village and Greenwich Village, looking back on it and kind of trying to remember how I felt about it at the time, seemed to be for older people in their 30s and 40s and 50s even. There was still kind of the vestige of the folk scene from the 60s. Remember, this has only been about 15, 20 years. I remember seeing ads for Dave Van Ronk, Aztec Two-Step. A lot of these folk acts from the 60s were still playing there at places on McDougal and Bleecker. Folk City was still there. I think in the summer '81 they were still pretty much a folk club. A year or two later they started booking rock bands. I saw a lot of rock shows there. Sonic Youth, Meat Puppets. Should have seen the Dream Syndicate. Screwed that up. I don't know what I was thinking. I got a long list of bands I should have seen. It's a lot shorter than the list I saw, but anyway, so that was kind of my take. It was older people, compared to me, 20 years old. People 30s, 40s, 50s and stuff. Soho and Tribeca, kind of the same thing, but it was definitely more artsy. There wasn't a lot of folk stuff going on. I remember about that time I met Laurie Anderson, the performance artist, who was well into her 30s. She lived down near Canal Street in Tribeca. Soho wasn't the big commercial shopping mall that we know now. It's pretty deserted, but things were starting to change, big time, pretty quickly too. The Upper West Side, that was for the Broadway folk. That was for classical musicians and stuff. Lincoln Center was around there. Now, hey Shelley, hope you don't mind me rambling about all this stuff. Had to get it off my chest. Once again, these videos I have up on my YouTube channel are kind of the catalyst for me going into this. I thought I'd talk a little about them. They've been getting some attention. I'm not going to say too much, but people have been posting them and so forth. So that was kind of like the scene in the summer of 1981. Now the bands that I guess it was Una Johnston booked at the Avenue B is the place to be. I need to say that. I don't think I mentioned that before. That was the official name of this event. It was billed as a concert. Could have been billed as a festival. One day outdoor festival. And were largely East Village bands with really young musicians in them. 4 out of the 6 bands that played were like that, including the one I was in. Now the Bush Tetras were on some adverts for the show that were coming out earlier in the Village Voice and stuff. They did not play that day. I have no idea why. To this day, I didn't know. I didn't know then. I didn't ask. I saw a lot of the show off and on. I lived on St. Mark's Place, real close to the park. I know I walked over and I saw a little of Liquid. Of course, I saw the band that played before us, Science. We went on last. But getting back to the East Village groups, all these groups had kind of started around the same time. We all knew each other. I didn't have any close friends in those bands, but I was friendly with a lot of them. I'd see them at parties in the neighborhood and stuff. And some of them were starting to get a little successful. Liquid, let's talk about them a minute. Certain General had opened up for Liquid Liquid at Hurrah about 3 or 4 months before that. It was really one of our first big time shows. And Liquid Liquid was releasing a 12-inch, 45 RPM EP on 99 Records. And that record went on to do extremely well. I can recall hearing it that summer, like everywhere. All the DJs were playing in New York. I took a side trip up to Ontario that summer for a few weeks. Played some shows up there. I remember going to some like new wave disco in Toronto and hearing it. And so they were starting to take off. And they were the only ones that had a record, I think. Conk was real new then. And they were a lot of neighborhood guys, Louis Sada guys, young people that had grown up in the neighborhood. The rest of us were kind of transplants for the most part. Like I think Liquid, a lot of those guys were from New Jersey. But Conk, at least 2 or 3 of them were from the East Village. And Conk and Liquid designed this awesome poster for the show that you can see online. It's totally ingenious. It's kind of a takeoff of like a boxing match poster, except it's Conk versus Liquid. And they took a guy from each band and had him kind of pose like as a boxer with gloves on, and gave him like these boxer names like, Pugsy so-and-so. And they were everywhere. They were plastered all over the East Village. You couldn't miss them for weeks leading up to that. One of the other bands from the East Village that played, young bands, young people, early 20s, mid-20s, was Pierce Turner, who was another Irishman who played in a band called the Major Thinkers. And they had this song, Avenue B is a Place to Be. And that's what the event ended up being named after. And I guess that was like a club hit. I don't really remember much. I remember seeing it in record stores. I don't know how many of the guys in Major Thinkers were actually from Ireland. I know Pierce was. I think another guy was, and he ended up starting this band called Black 47, which was like this Irish rock band, maybe early 90s. They got very popular here in New York. And they used to play at this pub called Paddy Riley's in the East 20s. I happened to live around there when they were getting started. I'm not really sure what happened with the Major Thinkers. Pierce, I believe, got signed to some label maybe in Europe and is still doing music. I don't know. But at the concert, if you watch his footage, it seems like he's singing the pre-recorded Major Thinker tracks without the Major Thinkers being there. So it was like a track act or whatever they call them. And it was a little awkward. My guess is the band was in Ireland or something. So Liquid, their journey through the music biz, as I recall, took some real strange turns. About 2 or 3 years after this concert that we played with them, they released a club hit called Cavern that had a very distinctive bass line. It was big on the club scene. And it was sampled by Grandmaster Flash and his record label for a song that was even more popular called White Lines. And if you are a fan of that era's music, or you were a club goer that era, you know this song. White Lines Going Through My Mind. And it's a straight rip-off of the music from Liquid, and there was a court case, and I heard they won 99 Records, Liquid. The label that was supposed to pay him went bankrupt. I heard there were gangsters involved, organized crime. I heard bad stories. And for all intents and purposes, it seemed to kill Liquid. They finally have a great hit, and then this unfortunate thing, music biz type thing, happens to them. But it ends well because they reunited, I think, in the 2000s and toured Europe, played Lincoln Center. And hell, there was a demand for them because they're legends. Their music holds up really well. there's something kind of timeless about it. It's totally groove based, a lot of percussion. Sal's vocals are just vocals. He's not really singing words per se. A lot of sounds, but it's just, you know, their use of space. There's no guitar, and you know, you should check it out. Listen to some of their songs on YouTube or something. And apparently they've been sampled like crazy, which, you know, means money in the pocket for them. Great, that's good for them. Conch. Conch was a young band in those days. They were one of the few that had a horn section per se. Our friend Shannon played trumpet. I think this guy named Dana played sax. I think he was the band leader. I think Certain General played a show with them at Irving Plaza. I'm not sure. Later got to be friendly with some of those guys, and still in touch with a couple of them. Great guys. Not 100% sure what happened with their story, but I do know they had some success. They were getting played on WLIB. A lot of their very danceable records were very popular and with the club people. And I know they went to Europe. I think they were signed to a label in Belgium. A lot of this is just coming off the top of my head. You know, I spent some time thinking about this, trying to remember stuff. But it's interesting that for this event, those were the bands that were booked. They were all neighborhood bands. They were all really, really young. The other band that played, Essential Bop, were from the UK. Looked them up. Apparently they split up right after this show, or shortly after. They came to the States. They played the old Peppermint Lounge. They played this event, and, you know, maybe a few others, I don't know. And then you know, the last show they played was Peppermint Lounge in August '81. The other band, Science, I have not been able to find anything out about. I have a video of them. Their music's really odd, really strange. Honestly, it doesn't do too much for me. I remember at the time thinking that, and it's a little tough to listen to. I do remember being backstage before they went on, because we played after them, so I got there a little early. And the guitar player was playing Delta Blues on a Stratocaster, and it just sounded awesome. And I just remember being really, really impressed. And then they came out and did the band thing, and it wasn't quite to my liking as compared to the other stuff that the guitar player was doing. So I don't know anything about that. Maybe someone out there does. I have a video of them on my channel. I have a video of Pierce Turner. I have a video of Essential Bop. I have a video of Certain General with yours truly. I have a video of just the crowd. It's about 3-4 minutes long. That's really amazing. It pans across the front of the audience. It's kind of taken from the stage, and just to see what the people look like, and just to see what was going on in the East Village in that hot summer of 1981. It's pretty amazing. One thing I know, and I remember from playing outdoor concerts, not only in New York, not only Tompkins Square, but just kind of like anywhere in those days, not so much now, but you'd be at the stage, and without fail, there'd always be like at least one guy, usually a guy, sometimes a woman, but usually a guy, who would just be dancing around like a crazy person right in front of the stage, and looking real strange and a little dangerous, like they were on speed or something. And every festival you went to, you could always count on seeing somebody like that. And they just came out of the woodwork for these outdoor concerts. I remember going to Summer Stage back then in the 80s and seeing people like that. And really, they seem to be on something. And there were people like that in the audience at Avenue B is the place to be. So let's see, any other things to add? Just real quickly, I kind of want to go over something. What was it like to play in a rock band? A very young, ambitious, young, post-punk rock band in the summer of 1981. Well, there was a scene, of course, like every era of music. The music revolution that had happened in the 70s and CBGBs and Maxes and all that, that was ancient history. That felt like another world, even though it had only been like 3-4 years. But that was kind of like the older generation. Those places, those clubs were still there, but no one went to CB's that I knew. No one played there that I knew. There was a club next to it on the Bowery called Great Gildersleeves. Nobody I know played there. No one I knew went there. That club, Great Gildersleeves, it was kind of like the closest thing to like a suburban, legit rock club in the city. There was nothing going on in Brooklyn then. There was no live music scene for the downtown New York rock scene. Peppermint Lounge was still around, the old one, which I loved. I loved that place. Danceteria wasn't there yet. I think they'd had an older version, but they were kind of between locations or something. Hurrah, I think, was still there. It was on the way out. Tier 3 was there. It was on the way out. I played all those places. In East Village, there was a club called A7 that a lot of people played. I went there to see friends play. I never played there. We were able to kind of skip a lot of the lower level clubs because we had friends that were DJs and stuff that helped us out. Made a huge difference. What we were trying to do that summer was there are a couple of names of that would have a lot of impact if you were a rock musician in New York City that summer. One was the New York Rocker. The New York Rocker was a monthly rock music magazine totally dedicated to punk, new wave, college rock, whatever, you know. In other words, they weren't talking about Van Halen and Judas Priest. And they were tremendously influential. And by that time, they had become a national paper, so they were covering bands from all over the world. But I believe when they started out in the 70s, it was almost like a local New York City fanzine. And the New York Rocker was a real cliquish group of people. The writers, the publishers, and the bands. There were New York rocker bands, they were called. And a lot of them lived in Hoboken. They were largely these pop bands, kind of artsy. I wouldn't call them power pop bands, really. But they were definitely pop bands. They weren't as experimental as the East Village bands, like the ones I was mentioning. And, their scene kind of fostered around Maxwell's there in Hoboken. And we aspired to kind of get into that clique because you seemed like you got to play better shows or you got written up. I don't really know. That whole thing lasted just a few months. It was a dead end. New York Rocker didn't like us. They reviewed one show. Didn't pan us, but it was not positive. So we gave up on that real quick. And then the other thing that we were always talking about, we were always strategizing, trying to figure out how to up our game, was Bob Singerman. And Bob Singerman was a booking agent and worked with maybe half a dozen bands that were young, post-punk rock bands like us. And he also worked with some bands in California. I know he worked with the Gun Club. He worked with the Ray Beats. He worked with Bush Tetras. He worked with the DBs. And a few others I just can't recall. Maybe the Flesh Tones. And man, it seemed to us if you could get in his little stable, you had it made because Those bands were always out touring. There was some kind of airline thing that you could buy an unlimited flight airline ticket. Yeah. Anybody remember that? Hey, Tony. Anyway, Bob was on top of that. So he'd send these bands out for like a month, and they'd fly all over to Zigzag, Seattle, Miami, New Orleans, Detroit, everywhere, California. They were always on the road because they had these airline tickets, and we wanted to be doing that so badly, and we were always trying to figure out how to get Bob Singerman down to the show, and got to make a pitch, and always strategizing. Of course, he never came to one show. Probably didn't know who the hell we were. Actually, probably did, but I never met him. I did deal with him like 15 years later on a sync licensing thing for a song I had. He was still in the music business then. I don't know what he's doing now. Nothing against you, Bob. I love you. It's great what you were doing then. I'm just kind of telling you where people's young musicians' heads were at, and so that was kind of like the avenue you wanted to take. And then also you wanted to try to get hooked up with some local label. And the big one that summer still was 99 Records, which was run by Ed Ballman out of his store. I think it was on McDougal Street. I know I went there and bought records. He's the one who put out the Liquid EP with Bellhead and all that. That was so popular. He's the one who put out Too Many Creeps by the Bush Tetras, which was even more popular. Huge hit. Huge dance club hit. So that's kind of what was going on. Things changed really quickly. That was also when the East Village was just starting to feel like it was getting gentrified. Not really, but it was starting to. And I remember like by summer 83, 84, rents had gone up. It was starting to change. But not that summer. That summer, I remember New York City, to me, felt kind of like what it was probably like in the 70s. The Deuce was going strong on 42nd Street. It was raw. Giuliani hadn't showed up. None of those quality of life laws had been passed. It was a wild, wild west up there with the sex trade and all of that. And there was a lot of crime too. Like I said, I got mugged a bunch. But let's move on. I think it's time for some songs. That was quite a spiel I made. I got one more show, one more series of videos I want to talk about, the ones from 1990. I'm going to play a couple, and then I'm going to get to that. Wrong harp. All right, I'll skip that song. No big deal. Anyway. Now I felt like dirt and giving up all I had. I was left to wander the main street, feeling so sad. While you gave me hope and lifted me out of the ditch, got me back on my feet, started again. I wonder where you were when I was feeling good. How lucky can I be? I can't believe this has happened to me. Yeah, to me. Yeah, to me. Yeah, to me. Now I know this is lucky roll of the dice. This took me this far to get here, and I ain't proud of pride. Oh, I know I'll try. Got to survive, whatever it takes, whatever I need to live and survive. I wonder where you were Cool. Song I recorded a few years back called Used Man for Sale. Alright. This is another new one called Shadow Road. Another one I co-wrote with my poet friend up in Kingston, David Shell. And it's another one that's going to be released this year. How's that for vague? The train horn was calling, middle of the night. The train horn was calling, moon was shining bright. Too old to dream, too desperate to scheme. All I had is this old. I'm walking down Shadow Road. Alone with this vision, early in the morning. Alone with this vision, came without warning. A world so stark, the difference between light and dark. All I had is this soul. I'm walking down Shadow Road. Too young to dream, too old to scheme. All I have is this old. I'm walking down Shadow Road. Excuse me. All right, very good. So I've got one more event that's, I talked about this at the very beginning. I don't know the time, but it's a few minutes down the road. The catalyst for this whole thing of me discussing these videotapes that I have acquired through the years and was given permission to post and share and talk about by the filmmakers was that, some of them have been getting some attention lately. Someone posted, a good friend of mine who might be tuning in, posted a performance by Delight that was on my channel. The videos from that event in Tompkins Square Park in '81, that's been getting some attention throughout the years. So that's kind of why I'm talking about these videos, and I feel they mean something. They're unique, and they're recording part of our culture, New York City culture, in a lot of cases. Incidentally, I've got my virtual tip info up there posted, Venmo and PayPal. If you're in a generous mood, I'd greatly appreciate it. Us musicians, we haven't been playing live shows for like a year, at least where I live, the Big Apple, New York City. Though I do have a show next month. Yes, speak of the devil. April 17th at Buckley's in Valley Stream, Long Island. For you New York City folk, that's a short walk from the Long Island Railroad Station. This is kind of an important club for a lot of people in Long Island. I haven't been there, never played there. pretty excited about it. Particularly for a lot of rockabilly musicians, it's been a haven for that style of music. Rockabilly's always been really big in Long Island, going back to the Stray Cats and even after. It's very popular there. So I'm going to be playing there, and I hope you can make it. There'll be music, I think, from like 7 to 11. We're going on at 9. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little about a few more videos that are part of my collection. You can find them on my YouTube channel, which is Prefab International Cine. That happens to be my video production company. That's why I call it that. But it's really a haven for all things Phil. So I have a playlist there called New York Underground or something like that, and they're all on there. Too many to talk about tonight, too many to list tonight. But I have a few videos, once again filmed by Danny Kornetz, of a benefit concert that happened in New York City at Irving Regan Plaza in May of 1990 for a man on the art scene called Carlo McCormick. Now, I was an acquaintance of Carlo's back then. Wasn't a close friend, kind of, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, that kind of thing. I think he's still around. He's big in the scene of art, curating shows, working with museums. 1990, that's kind of the tail end of the East Village art explosion that I was lucky enough to witness and be part of. Hey, I went to a bunch of openings and had a few drinks, That was kind of my extent. But anyway, this guy Carlo, I had gotten busted for something in Mexico. And he had a whole bunch of legal fees, so they organized a concert. And the videos I have are of what at the time was a brand new New York City band called Delight. And I also have some footage of the Psychedelic Furs playing at Irving Plaza that night, an acoustic version. Now the Delight footage is a real find. It's when the band was poised for success. Trying to figure out the timeline of that band, and of course everyone remembers Groove Is in the Heart was on MTV every other hour for quite a while. I think they had recorded their album and they were getting ready to start touring, and they were waiting for it to get on MTV. I mean, they were just on the edge of the huge success that they had, and they, in these videos, they'll blow you away. They were polished. They were ready to go. I actually saw them around that time at Union Square in 14th Street, Manhattan. I think it was a Wigstock concert. I think Wigstock, which had also been produced at the Band Shell in Tompkins Square Park for 1 year maybe, or maybe 2 or 3, was in Union Square at a stage in Union Square. Is that stage still there? I don't know. We're talking 30 years ago. But I remember seeing them there, and they were fantastic. So, those videos I have of Delight. They're 3 songs on my channel. They're fantastic. And so I recommend seeing those. And then the Psychedelic Fur footage is quite good, too. I think they moved to New York City at some point, and we're living here then. I mean, who knows what they're doing now. But it's pretty cool stuff. It gets a lot of views, a lot of interest on the channel. People are commenting about it. Delight, a lot of guys love Lady Keir. They're big fans, so people are always talking about her on my videos and stuff. So that's going to be it for me talking about my rare video collection. I urge you to check it out. I have links posted. All the stuff I'm talking about is, what's that? Lady Bunny, yeah. Brian. That's right. Brian Butterick, Dee. He, when I knew him, he worked at the Pyramid. Brian. Lady Bunny was his drag name. And well, you know, the whole Wigstock thing was born on a round of drinks that those guys were having at the Pyramid one day, or King Tut's Wawa Hut across the street, which was kind of like their afternoon drinking spot. And it was one of those guys' brainchild, and I'm sure Brian was in on it. Regretfully, we lost Brian. It was last year, the year before. So, yeah. Lady Keir is amazing, Tony. She really is. So I got one more for you. Once again, I'll be playing live April 17th. Thanks for humoring me today, people. Thanks for listening to me talk about a little music history in New York City, which, for better or worse, ended up me talking about myself, since it's a subjective thing and a lot of it is based on my own personal experience. So I'm going to take you out with another new song called Just Another Traveling Man, another one that's going to be released. Now, when's it going to be released, though? Oh, sometime this year. Okay. All right. Hattie Holloway, that's right. Tony, you're right. Brian was Hattie. Lady Bunny was someone else. That's right. Good catch. I remember them both, Lady and Hattie. And there were others, too. And they were a fun crew. Anyway, this one's called Just Another Traveling Man. Meet me by the old Pepsi side. I've been standing here since 9:30, smoking cast-offs and drinking gin, smoking my nickel cigarette. Postman, don't ever stick around. You thought you'd gone and turned me down. Don't ever try to understand that I'm just another traveling man. It was getting on to noon. I thought that you'd be showing up soon. My throat was getting mighty dry. Me and that Nevada sky. Oh, don't ever stick around. You thought you'd gone and turned me down. Don't even try to understand that I'm just another traveling man. I realized that you weren't showing. One thing I learned from his life of bumming, a freight was headed down the rail. I decided to go